Happy 2020 and welcome to a year in review edition of Friday 5.
From the Impossible Burger to the Battle of the Brews.
And from extensive flooding to international trade deals.
It has certainly been a year full of challenges as well as opportunities for those in the agriculture industry.
Let's review some of our top stories from the year.
We'll begin by going back to June.
That's when alternative proteins were becoming familiar, and Bryce, you were willing to see if beef would beat the impossible.
Do I have the burger here?
So while he's eating this, the Impossible Burgers contain a molecule called heme, and that is supposedly what makes meat taste like meat. What do you think?
No. Don't like that one. Nope.
Oh, so for most of us, the majority of heme we consume comes from animals, but soy roots also contain heme, and that's where Impossible Foods gets theirs.
Don't like it.
On the legal side of this issue, Senator Deb Fischer of Nebraska has introduced the Real Meat Act that was back in October, which aims to codify the definition of beef for labeling purposes.
Number 4 on the countdown, we'll go back to the Corn-troversy in May. That's when Big Beer was duking it out over corn syrup.
Well, the saga between Miller Coors and AnheuserBusch continues.
The saga all started back with the Super Bowl commercial that drew some criticism from farmers and the National Corn Growers Association. Miller Coors sued AnheuserBusch in March, saying the company spent $30 million on a false and misleading campaign.
Last week, a federal judge ordered AnheuserBusch to stop using the ads that describe Bud Light as containing 100% less corn syrup than Miller Lite and Coors Light. That said, though, other ads, including the Super Bowl commercial, were not banned. In September, a federal judge ordered that Anheuser-Busch stop using Bud Light packaging that implies that brews made from Miller Coors contain corn syrup.
On to number 3 on the countdown, agriculture policy around trade has been a hot topic throughout the year.
Well, optimism is growing that the U.S. and China could wrap up a trade agreement possibly by this month.
Trade officials from the U.S. and China concluded talks in Beijing Wednesday, with another critical round scheduled in the U.S. for next week.
A deal at this point between the U.S. and China is expected in mid-May, with a possible signing of an agreement planned for June. However, an agreement does not necessarily mean an end to tariffs.
That's right. The U.S. is planning on keeping some tariffs on China, and China will likely keep retaliatory tariffs on U.S. ag products like soybeans, according to a Chinese trade expert.
President Donald Trump says that he'll be signing a Phase 1 trade deal with China at the White House coming up on January 15th.
Number 2 on the countdown, let's go back to March, when historic blizzards and flooding created quite a few challenges for producers throughout the entire year.
Let's begin by taking a look back at last week, when Nebraska's most widespread natural disaster was just beginning.
A bomb cyclone hit the entire state, bringing a historic blizzard in the west and rain in the east.
Since that storm on Wednesday, all we've seen is water. 85 cities in 74 counties have declared emergencies. Almost 2,000 miles of roads have been closed at one point by this flood. As we know, many areas are still recovering from flood damage. With the ground still soggy heading into the winter months, experts say that is setting the stage for more flooding into the next spring.
And number 1 on the countdown, we traveled to 15 locations, bringing you agriculture stories about everything from fireworks to soybean tires and Christmas trees to pumpkins.
We've had a lot of fun delivering the facts within the fun.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Friday 5, which is brought to you by the Nebraska Corn Board.
Have a great 2020. We'll see you next week.
This is Mike. Mike likes his car. Mike likes to save money. And Mike likes to breathe. So Mike fills up with E15 with 15% American ethanol. The clean octane in E15 gives Mike the performance he wants from his engine and the clean air he wants for his family. Better yet, E15 costs less at the pump. Higher octane, cleaner air, lower cost. E15 sure gives Mike a lot to like. Discover E15 with American ethanol.